Sylvia Mann, and I'm here with Ellsberg, the leaker of the Pentagon Papers. So, how would you define a whistleblower? What is your definition? Because in this speech, Nikki Hager he said that he kind of made a differentiation between whistleblowers and leakers.
Well, the leaker is anyone who breaks the internal rules of an organization and discloses information that the organization of any group, doesn't have to be the government, could be a group of friends or a school group, whatever, tells tales out of school, as they say, and so forth, washes dirty linen. The whistleblower is more the one who's denounced for washing dirty linen in public, namely someone who reveals what he or she regards as wrongdoing, possibly criminal, deceptive, not necessarily criminal, in the government, reckless behavior, but anyway, embarrassing behavior, and rightfully embarrassing to the people inside, to outside officials, or to the public, I should say, in a way to make them accountable. It's the worst sort of betrayal regarded by the members of the group, and yet it may generally be in the much better interests of the society at large, or of the country, or the world, or humanity. But they will still be regarded very badly by the people inside who don't want to be accountable and don't want to be held associated with people who are conducting these policies. So it's, if it's a matter especially of classified information in my country, they're likely to be prosecuted now. But even without that, corporations keep secrets that they should not keep all the time. The tobacco companies, for example, went for generations pretending that they believed their product was not carcinogenic, they were not selling it to teenagers, and it was not addictive. And they swore to that extent in front of Congress. Thousands of people knew that, tens of thousands, inside those tobacco companies while they were condemning hundreds of thousands of people to death. And they knew that. But two people, for example, Merrill Williams and Jeffrey Wigand, told the public, told the press, told the Congress that they knew within their own organizations they had studies showing that, giving the lie to all this. They were definitely whistleblowers.
Yeah. How would you determine what is the public interest?
We have a hacker here, or a...
Wait, we're not in control of him, by the way. Wait, we're not in control of him at all.
Hackers aren't usually in anyone's control.
No.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, what is in the public interest?
Yeah,
the question here is, sometimes there's great differences of opinion on this subject, and the gray areas where everyone, even the most reasonable people, will disagree as to what the public interest is. And the tendency of everyone outside the government and inside is to give the president the benefit of the doubt on this. He or she has more information, they have our interests at heart, etc. But that is very far from even often being true. It's President Nixon put it, when the president does it, it's not illegal. Well, that's the definition of a monarch. And not of a democratic leader. And it's not true that what is good for the prime minister is good for the country in every case, or what's good for the president is good for the country. Now, there are many cases in which that's perfectly obvious to everyone inside. In other words, there's a great area that is a great amount of information that's not a gray area. Virtually everyone in the National Security Agency knew, as Edward Snowden did, that what they were doing in the first part of this century was totally criminal and unconstitutional. They were invading the privacy of every person in every private communication without a warrant, without any judicial. They all knew that was illegal. One person finally gave the documents on that. Hundreds or thousands should have felt challenged to do that, but they didn't.
But they knew that it was against the law, but perhaps they thought the law was wrong, or perhaps they justified it to themselves.
No doubt a number of those people who knew that it was against the law, starting at the top, felt that it was necessary for the country to be doing this. Although, by the way, very hard for them to explain why it had to be done illegally, unconstitutionally. They had a secret court of questionable constitutionality itself. The very idea of a secret court is kind of against the idea of a rule of law, secret evidence, secret decisions.
Are those the FISA courts?
But the FISA court. But the administration didn't choose even to go to that court, which totally rubber-stamped everything they gave them. Out of tens of thousands of requests for surveillance that court got, I think they turned down 4, maybe 10. They can't explain why they went to that court, except they didn't go, except that they feared that even that court wouldn't give them this authority. And they could have even gotten Congress to pass the law. They didn't bother because they wanted to establish the principle, we decide. We alone decide what's good for the country and what should happen. And they were probably sincere in their beliefs as what were good. They were wrong, and hardly anyone agrees with them when they see the actual facts. They were blinded by their own power and their own arrogance. And that's very common.
Something that struck me as odd is that there were a lot of criticism of Chelsea Manning about not going through what they call the proper channels, or maybe he tried to, but they said you should always do that. I've never understood why the proper channels aren't the press. Why is that an improper channel?
Well, I've never heard it put just that way. That's a good answer to the question.
Oh, sorry.
They did go to the proper channel. That's what I feel myself. I wasted, seriously, some 21 months or something like that of going to Congress, giving them this. I gave them this top secret information. The Pentagon Papers were 7,000 pages of top secret documents on the history of U.S. decision making. And I gave it to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and they promised hearings. But they backed off. They waited for me to do it, in effect. And really, almost 2 years went by. That shouldn't have happened. I'm telling people now, go to the press before you go to Congress, or at the same time. Congress wouldn't move without the press pressing them. So I'm agreeing with you totally. The press is the proper channel for this material. But in terms of the government officials who believe, oh, the public should not, in our opinion, have this information, be very bad, very dangerous, blood on their hands. So they say, okay, you should go to the Inspector General and tell him there's something illegal going on here. And I think, by the way, not only illegal, but many of these people made the right judgment that it was not only illegal, but totally ineffective at stopping terrorism, at finding. They have not been able to come up with one single case of a terrorist plot that was uncovered by mass surveillance, as opposed to targeted surveillance based on suspicion or informants of various kinds. Nothing. They actually initially said 57 plots have been stopped by this. Then when Senator, I think it was Udall, Wyden and Udall were pressing them on this, they said, really 57? Let's see the evidence. It came down to 1. But the one was not a terrorist plot. It was somebody in the Midwest who had sent $8,000 to an organization in the Mideast that was associated with terrorism. That was it. Nothing. So, in other words, these people at the high level were in a position to know it's of no use, it is not helpful, and it's illegal. Whichever order you put those in, it's illegal and it's not useful. So, okay. 4 people at the NSA, William Binney, Kurt Wiebe, Edward Loomis, and Tom Drake, all went to the Inspector General of the NSA, National Security Agency, and also the Inspector General of the Defense Department. The NSA is under the Defense Department. Nothing happened. Nothing came back. This is all illegal, and it's useless, and it's a terrible violation of rights. Then they went to Congress. That's the other thing, on a classified basis. In closed hearing, talked to the staff. Nothing. As all of them have concluded, what we did accomplished nothing in changing this or even informing the public or anything. What Snowden did was right. In other words, going through the channels that they did was useless. And by the way, it only identified them as potential leakers. So when the leak did occur by other people, by the New York Times, to the New York Times, all of these people were suspected as being the leakers because they had registered the fact that it was unconstitutional and illegal. Who else but they would have done that? Well, none of them, in fact, were the leakers. They should have been, but they weren't. Yet they lost their computers. They were, Binney, for example, who is a diabetic amputee, lost a leg, was in the shower when the FBI invaded his house at gunpoint, knocked on his shower door. He opened it to see the FBI pointing a gun at him in front of his children. He's naked, they're dripping, they allow him to towel off, and then they interrogate him for 8 hours, seize his computers and all this. All of this because he had gone through channels.
Yeah.
And he was not the legal. All of them suffered this kind of fate. And Drake was even subject to a totally wrongful prosecution, which eventually the charges were essentially dismissed. But he had been bankrupted in the process. So as an example to other potential leakers, it's pretty powerful. But Snowden did exactly what he had to do and what he should have done. He looked at Chelsea Manning, who was held in isolation for 10.5 months in Quantico, Virginia, which the UN rapporteur, Juan Mendez, said was cruel and inhuman treatment, possibly torture. Public protest got Chelsea out of the isolation cell and into the general prison population, which is much better for her, where she will be for 35 years sentence. So Snowden said, if I'm to talk to journalists and explain this material to them, which he's been doing every day now for a year, what the acronyms mean, what the relationships of these different projects mean, he does that on encrypted messages from outside the country. That's the only way it could be done. Yeah. He's doing exactly what he should have done.
But he didn't get all the documents out there. Do you think that he should have given
Well, he gave all that he had to The Guardian, to Glenn Greenwald, to Laura Poitras, and Bart Gellman of the Washington Post. And then The Guardian shared them with the New York Times when they had. Of course, this is a small number of people. Wikipedia, I think, put it out to a much larger, not WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks. Sorry.
Same thing.
WikiLeaks is much better than Wikipedia, in my opinion, although I rely on Wikipedia too. But they gave it, for example, to Le Monde and to Der Spiegel and to El País in Spain. Each of those put out information that their own nations were interested in their own language, which the New York Times would never have bothered to put out. The New York Times wouldn't have revealed stuff about Tunisia. But Le Monde had that go to Tunis, where it was critical to the overthrowing of Ben Ali. Had it been left just to the New York Times, Ben Ali would still be there in Tunisia. So I would say even right now, it would be very desirable to have that information in broader hands, have more people working on it. It's so much information. They need more people working on it.
And why is it so effective in America? It seems that there is this narrative that, oh, these leaks can help or damage the American people. And it seems to be always restricted to what is best for the American people, and there's no. It seems the rest of the world doesn't seem to come into the equation at all.
For somebody who has a sense, a concern for other people in the world, as Chelsea Manning did, she said, for example, to Adrian Lamo, her informant, I want to show what the Western countries, capitalist countries, are doing to the third world throughout the world, not just America. So it was wrongdoing, not just to Americans, and not just by our government. It was showing what other governments were doing to other people in the world. And she was prepared to go to prison for life, as she said to Lamo, or even be executed for getting that out. Well, Snowden has been criticized, for example, by some Americans by saying, look, you're revealing what other intelligence services are doing to other people. What does that have to do with wrongdoing? Does that make you a whistleblower? He happens to be concerned about the human rights of other people, too. He feels that mass surveillance is wrong, whatever country does it. And every country is doing it, in his opinion, to the extent of their ability, their technical and financial ability. And he thinks that's an invasion of human rights all over the world. And he's prepared to be exiled and to risk death, which he definitely is a real risk for him, and life imprisonment to get that out. He could be snatched. I think he's probably somewhat safer in Russia than he would be in many other more democratic countries. So his physical safety might not be as good. But, well, does that answer your question?
Yes, no, that does. we're going to have to wrap it up there. You're in very high demand.